NBA free agency has been pretty interesting this year. New CBA implications have added more critical thinking into the process of moves, and that's made it a lot harder for teams to really be aggressive. Nonetheless, this hasn't stopped moves from happening, and there have been a lot of them. So let's kick it off with the biggest move of them all, Paul George signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. This move was a done deal once it was reported that Paul George would not be returning to the Clippers. Finally, the Sixers have made a positive move for a star player that actually fits their needs. Since Joel Embiid has came into town, for years and years and years, the Sixers have always made aggressive moves. You had the pairing of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and of course that didn't work due to spacing issues. The Sixers went out and added Jimmy Butler, but that didn't last too long due to upper management issues. And then they went out and added James Harden, and once again, that didn't last due to upper management issues. For years and years and years, the biggest issue for the Sixers was finding Joel Embiid the perfect co-star. And it's funny because the Sixers made all these aggressive moves to try to find him one, and the one place they found one was in the draft. Tyrese Maxey is the perfect complementary guard alongside Joel Embiid, and he had an all-NBA leap this past season. The duo was on an historic pace to start the year. This team was set to win over 60 games until Joel Embiid suffered an unfortunate injury. With that injury, the season essentially halted, and now came the offseason where it was clear that they had to make a big move. One to add more talent to this team in the hope that this move would help them win an NBA championship. And they might have done that. A 4-year, $212 million contract was what it took to get Paul George to come to Philly. And he's a seamless fit on this team. Paul George is of course a 6'9" wing that can pass, dribble, and shoot. Last season he had an all-star year, putting up great numbers across the board. For the Sixers, their main problem last year was their lack of any offensive production outside of Embiid and Maxey. With Embiid's injury, it just made things worse. Now, with the offensive gravity that those two carry, paired with Paul George, should take their team to new heights. And the Eastern Conference has just continued to get better. The Knicks have made moves, the Celtics have stayed the same, as well as the Pacers, Magic, Cavs. It's going to be a big fight to see who can knock down the Celtics. The Sixers have a good chance. Now, of course, you have to take the good with the bad when it comes to team building. As great as Paul George is, he's 34 years old at this point, and $212 million over 4 years is a lot of money for someone at that age. You factor in all the injury concerns, the wear and tear that he's endured, as well as the consistent playoff blunders, you start to question the move a little bit. You factor that in with Joel's questionable health, there's some concern. Now, aside from Paul George, we've had a plethora of other noteworthy moves. Klay Thompson's time with the Warriors has officially come to an end. He's headed to Dallas, which would be an interesting fit. I think Klay Thompson will be a vital piece to this team's success, but he has to be surrounded by players that make sense. In Dallas, he'll probably be asked to do a lot defensively, and some of those will probably be things that he just isn't capable of doing anymore. He's more than likely going to be the POA defender, but due to his limited lateral quickness, how effective can he be in that area? His shooting will be a big plus, but the Mavericks run a lot of isolation play. It's not really the movement that Klay is used to. I'm very interested to see how Jason Kidd and the Mavericks really work this out. But of course, we have to first see if he even starts. They only gave him about $17 million a year. That is right there with the 6-man contract. Klay Thompson had a lot of problems coming off the bench for the Warriors last year, so I don't think he'd be too keen in doing that again. So will Mark Cuban override Jason Kidd's decision if he decides to bring him off the bench in hopes of keeping Klay happy? Or will Jason Kidd have full say? We're gonna have to see. The Pelicans didn't really make a signing, but they made a trade that does not make any sense to me. Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., and 2 firsts was the price for DeJounte Murray. I don't really like that trade. Me personally, I don't think DeJounte Murray is that good. What we saw in Atlanta was, I think, the player that DeJounte Murray is going to be moving forward. DeJounte Murray can't really play off ball, and you're adding that to a team that has CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Zion. He's bad on ball. He's a ball stopper, he's pretty inefficient, and defensively, he's pretty suspect. And the price you pay for him as well as his contract is going to have him out to be like one of your top options when he probably shouldn't be more than a role player at this point. Not to mention, you're wasting assets on things that really aren't pressing needs, considering the fact that you still don't know who's going to be the center for this team to start next season. Just a very interesting situation from them. Even if you move on from Brandon Ingram, I still don't like this move. I just can't really make sense of it no matter how I look at it. But taking a deeper dive into free agency, the Clippers have made a couple of moves since losing out on Paul George. Adding Derrick Jones Jr. is a great addition, and now they kind of have a solid foundation around Kawhi and James Harden. It didn't really make sense in breaking the bank to add players if Kawhi just wasn't going to be healthy. That's always going to be the biggest question mark. Because if he is, I think this team is going to be really, really good. And all things considered, I think this team is probably at the same level of play as they were before they lost Paul George. Having James Harden as a playmaker is going to be a big plus. He elevates the entire team, and we should see a couple of players have career years. Improved depth was the biggest thing for the Clippers, and they achieved that this offseason. Now, looking at a team that hasn't had a good free agency, it's the Warriors. DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, and Buddy Hield are all good additions, but it probably won't be enough to make any real noise this year. Of course, you lost Klay Thompson. You've tried to move Andrew Wiggins to no avail. This team is kind of treading between contention and rebuilding. It's really a weird situation considering how inefficient Steph Curry was last year as a playmaker, and then you don't really add any ball handlers. I kind of sense the same thing happening again this year. I don't really have too much faith in the Warriors. The OKC Thunder are probably my winners of this offseason. Early on in the offseason, they traded for Alex Caruso without giving anything of significance. And then in this free agency, they were able to get Isaiah Hartenstein. This allows them to have better positional versatility and adds more to a defense that was already incredible. Now Chet can play more at the power forward, and Jalen Williams can play more at the small forward, making this Thunder team that much scarier. Now you're going to have 48 minutes of consistent, elite level center play. That's very important for any team looking to contend for a championship. And then we have the Lakers. The Lakers came into this free agency looking to make big moves to go all in. LeBron James was willing to take a pay cut to add more talent. And with that, the Lakers made 0 new moves. No trades and no signings for a team that is looking to go all in. It's kind of worrisome. Their best bet now is probably signing someone like DeMar DeRozan, though I don't really like his fit with JJ Redick's spacing, nor do I think they have the money to do so. You have the draft capital as well as the contracts to make some big moves, but what move is really out there to make? Maybe they could look to trade for Zach LaVine. As much as people don't like him, I think he'd be a great fit on the Lakers, and he wants to be in LA. He stated multiple times his desire to play alongside LeBron James, but as of right now, there are a lot of angry Lakers fans, and they should be. This team was a play-in team for the last couple of seasons, and they haven't made any moves to fix that. So it'll probably be more of the same this year. But outside of that, free agency is now dwindling down. Most of the other teams have just re-signed their own players. Like I said earlier, considering the new CBA, this is probably the best bet for a lot of teams. Now, I'm really loving the way some of these teams are looking. For others, I don't know. But that's what makes the NBA great. We won't know how these moves turn out until we see it on an NBA court. So like I always say, we're just gonna have to wait and see.